by Aaron Rodgers. Day 60.
And so we wait yet again as the Jets have done everything they can with their trip out west. Diana Rossini reporting earlier today that they are extremely optimistic in Florham Park, where the Jets facility is today, that they will have Aaron Rodgers as their quarterback next year. They're trying to put it across the finish line. And you understand why the Jets have gone to do this. But I would caution everybody to just not get ahead of themselves. There are about where Aaron Rodgers is and what this looks like altogether. First of all, what does an actual deal look like with compensation? Here's Diana earlier today on KJM.
From the Jets' perspective, they have done everything they possibly could do to line this up. I'm interested to see, I don't know the details of what a contract would look like, but you have to figure that's probably a very big part of this.
Right.
In terms of compensation with the Green Bay Packers, I was told that the Packers weren't in this looking for the moon and the stars, that they're being very fair about this with the Jets. But the contract, I think, is going to be the element of this that, if it were to come together, will probably be the most interesting part of this. But knowing that ownership is all in, you have to figure these are the things that usually work out when ownership wants something this badly.
Well, the Packers aren't looking for the sun, the moon, and the stars because they can't get rid of him fast enough at this point. The organization that has had him for his entire career is sick of him, is sick of his act, and they can't get rid of him fast enough because they would rather go into next year trying to find out what Jordan Love is, and if he's not the guy, we can go and chase our next quarterback of the future. Let's get to some harsh truths here, okay? Where does Rodgers actually put the Jets in the AFC? Does he put them amidst the top teams of Buffalo, Kansas City, Cincinnati? We could even throw, because of the quarterbacks, the Chargers in there. I'd even throw Jacksonville in that mix. Does Aaron Rodgers put the Jets there? On paper, you would think automatically, yes. No, he doesn't. Guys, forget what his name is. If you took his name off the page and you were looking at his statistics from last year and you were looking and watching him play, if you didn't know who he was last year, you would think, this guy's okay. Think about how quickly Rodgers went from MVP to 26th in the league in QBR. 26th in the league. Andy Dalton was in front of him. Daniel Jones was in front of him. There were plenty of also-rans in front of him in quarterback rating. And you can say all you want about what QBR means. What it means is that in the way it is measured these days, he was 20 points behind Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson was 9th in the league in that category. For everybody that sits there and says, well, Lamar can't play quarterback. He was the MVP of the league, and he was able to hit enough players to throw 36 touchdowns a couple of years ago. You're going to talk about injuries? All right, that's fine. Here's what I saw last year with Aaron Rodgers. He was nowhere near the same player. If he played with a broken thumb down the stretch of the season, I'm not using that as an excuse. He wasn't out there. But the big questions are, what's the commitment level? When you had a team in the Packers 2 years ago that won 13 games, that had a quarterback who was an MVP, and he goes out there and is god-awful in their first playoff game in the divisional round, and they lose to the 49ers, wouldn't you think that would motivate somebody to get better? At 38 years old, it did not motivate Aaron Rodgers to get better. It motivated him to go off and enjoy all 6 months of his offseason. And I'll see you in the summer. I'm not worried about losing my best receiver. I'm not worried about young receivers. I don't need to show up to minicamp or to OTAs to get on the same page as them. Aaron, what's your commitment level to playing? And I'm not talking about how long. I'm talking about how much you actually care about winning at this point in your career. Are you going to show up for OTAs? Are you going to show up for minicamp? Are you going to show up in good shape? It was just a few weeks ago that the Packers had leaked it out there that they were annoyed at the fact that they felt like when he did show up, he wasn't ready to go. Think about all the times last year when Rodgers is looking at these receivers who he hasn't played with before and is annoyed with them because he perceives them to have run the wrong route. They probably did. But he wasn't on the same page with them. Don't you bear responsibility in that? Are you going to put the Jets in the exact same situation next year that you have with the Packers for the last 2 years? Because when somebody talks about retirement as much as Aaron Rodgers does, mentally you're probably already there. There's one reason that Aaron Rodgers will come back and play right now. $60 million. If you think he's walking away from that, you are out of your ever-loving mind. And if you see him retire here in the next few weeks, I think we have established that doesn't mean anything. He could be back in 3 months, and all he wants to do is skip training camp, and somebody will pay him a boatload because he's Aaron Rodgers. What are the Jets giving up to get him? What does the draft capital look like? And maybe most importantly of all, what role is Aaron Rodgers going to play in my locker room? Is he good for my team's culture that I'm trying to build right now? Do I really want to take a shot with the young team I have at a one-year situation? Because that's all I can count on it being. Do I really want to do that? Man, I would be careful asking these questions. And then I would ask myself the following question. I have a 26-year-old quarterback who is potentially available right now, who is in his prime, who has won an MVP, who was, as I said, 9th in QBR last year. Yes, who has been banged up a bit the last couple of seasons. But when I look at other quarterbacks around the league, there have been plenty of guys making a whole lot more money than me, theoretically, in what his contract would look like. More time than I did. Deshaun Watson, injuries and dumbassery counting, has missed 39% of the games in his career. He's making $46 million a year. Daniel Jones is track for $40 million per. Dak Prescott, 14%, $40 million a year. Kyler Murray, $46 million, 14%. You know who's right there below them? Is Lamar Jackson. So if you're going to come at me with all the injuries of his career, there have been plenty of others that have had injuries too. Here's what I know. Lamar Jackson is a winner. 45-16 in his career as a starter. A winning percentage of 737. 737. He's 26 years old. He's a top 3 most electrifying player in the sport. You want a force multiplier? That's what Lamar Jackson is in every way. And you're going to add him to the Jets with getting Breece Hall back, with Garrett Wilson, with Uzama at tight end, with Elijah Moore, with some really good weapons and an improving offensive line. Yeah, I'm going to take a shot with Lamar Jackson. You're going to tell me he's going to cost me 2 first-round picks and $200 million guaranteed? Just answer me this. How often does a franchise quarterback like this become available? How often does it happen? If you're going to scream and yell at the injuries at the end of last year, I'd also ask you this. Think back to the beginning of last year. Should Lamar Jackson have played without a contract? He should have held in because he came out and he did play without a long-term deal, which the Ravens have really just mishandled from the get-go. And now he gets hurt during the season. Lamar Jackson was damned if he did and damned if he didn't. If he had come back and played while injured, it would have been held against him, because if his play wasn't good enough, well, you would have said, well, his play wasn't good enough. I have a feeling that if Lamar Jackson had the contract at the beginning of last year, he would have been playing in those last couple of games. And you know what? He was right to not play. He was right to not play. If you had $250 million sitting in front of you, are you doing anything to risk that? The answer is no. And if you try to answer it any other way, you're lying. Chris Carlin in for Greeny on ESPN Radio and on the ESPN app. So wouldn't the Jets be much better off with Lamar Jackson right now for the long term and for winning right now than Aaron Rodgers? 888-SAY-ESPN, 888-729-3776. That is your question. Do you believe that Aaron Rodgers puts the Jets in the mix with the top 3 to 4 teams in the AFC? That's what I want to hear from you about. 888-SAY-ESPN, 888-729-3776. Get ready for Champions, the hilarious new movie starring Woody Harrelson. Woody's a hot-headed basketball coach